Don't worry, baby, just call out my name. I'll be there in a hurry. You don't have to worry. Oh, baby, there ain't no mountain high enough. Ain't no mountain. Ain't no valley low enough. Valley too low. Ain't no river wide enough to keep me from getting to you, baby. Remember the day I set you free. I told you you could.
About squares, square roots, cubes, and cube roots. When we talk about squares, first off, that's what this guy is right here. Okay? All a square is it's an exponent. And what it means is when you see a number that's in the air above another number, you multiply that number that many times against itself. So when we say 3 to the second power, what's another way of saying that, Chantel?
3 times 3.
3 times 3. That means the same thing. 3 times 3. And 3 times 3 is what? 9. So 3 to the second power is what? 9. Okay? Let's say we have 5 to the second power. What's another way of saying that?
5 times
5 times 5. And 5 times 5 is what? 25. So 5 to the second power is what? 25. Now, to the second power, what's another word for that, Ricky?
Square.
Square. That means square. There's another thing called cube. That's what this guy is right here, cube. Let's say I take a 2 and I cube it, meaning 2 to the third power. An exponent applies by the same rule. This 3 that's in the air means that I multiply this 2 against itself 3 times. So what I want to do is I want to rewrite this as 2 times 2 times 2. So taking it one step at a time, 2 times 2 is what?
4.
4. 4 times 2 is what?
8.
8. So 2 to the third power is what?
8.
8. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Any questions on that? Does that make sense?
Maybe.
Okay. Let's try one. Chantel. 8 to the second power.
That will be 64.
Okay. Because that's the same thing as 8 times 8, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Christine. 2 to the second power.
4.
4. Because that's the same thing as 2 times 2, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Miss Debbie.
Yes.
4 to the second power.
16.
Good job. Because that's the same thing as 4 times 4, right?
Yes.
Okay. Marcellus. 2. No, let's not do 2. Let's do 3 to the second power.
6.
Okay, close. And this is, I'm glad you said that. A lot of times, guys, when we get these problems, what a lot of people do, and that's a common mistake, is they'll take this 3 and they'll multiply it by the 2. But that's not what we want to do. We don't want to say 3 times 2. What we want to do is we want to say 3 times what? 3. And 3 times 3 is what? 9. 3 times 3 is 9. So 3 to the second power is 9. Good job. Now, let's do 2 cubed. 2 cubed.
Hold on. 2 cubes.
Yep.
It is 8.
It is 8. Because 2 cubed is the same thing as 2 times 2 times 2, right?
Uh-huh.
Okay. Okay. Let's do 5 to the second power. Good job. Because that's the same thing as 5 times 5. So we understand what squares are, and we understand what cubes are, right?
Mm-hmm.
Good job. Now that we understand what squares and cubes are, let's go to the next step. The opposite of a square is the square root. This side. All the square root means is, let's say I have the square root 49. The answer to that is, what number can I multiply by itself to get 49? Anybody have any ideas?
7 times
7 times 7 is what? 49. So the square root of 49 is what?
7.
7. Good job. Does that make sense?
What you get out of
Okay.
it, a few, like this is one,
Okay. Let's take the square root of 81.
9 times 9.
9 times 9 is what?
81.
81. Good job. So the square root of 81 is what?
9.
9. Does it make sense? Okay.
what he doing up
Square root of 25.
5.
5. Good job. Because 5 times 5 is what? 25. Is the square root making sense? Okay, let's take it one step higher, and this will be the hardest thing that you do. Cube root. You'll see a 3, and then you'll see a square root sign. Cube root is the same concept as square root, except instead of thinking about what number can we multiply by itself one time to get an answer, we're thinking about a number that we can multiply by itself 2 times.
3 times 7.
Okay.
No.
It's I want to say the square root is 3.
Okay,
3
square root,
This cube root.
the cube root. The cube root of 27 is 3. Reason being, and I said 1 time and 2 times, but I meant 1 time and 2 times after. In actuality, when we do the square root, we're multiplying a number times itself. Okay? So we see that number 2 times. When we do cube root, we see this number 3 times. 3 times 3 times 3 equals 27. Because 3 times 3 is what?
9.
9. 9 times 3 is what?
27.
27. Good job.
That part's kind of hard.
It is a little bit hard. It's a little bit more
That
challenging.
part is.
It's a little bit more challenging, but it's going to be on your test. So, don't be intimidated by it. You're going to get it with the more practice you do. And more than anything, you want to walk yourself through the process. Tell yourself, there's this number that when we multiply by itself 3 times, we get 8. Who is the number? What times what gives us 8? And we got to use the same number. Anybody have any ideas?
2.
2. Because 2 times 2 is what?
4.
4. 4 times 2?
8.
8. So the cube root of 8 is what?
2.
2. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Now that we know what squares, square roots, cubes, and cube roots are, and we did order of operations, we know what that is, right? On the test, more than likely, they never test you on a single concept. It's not like they're going to put on there, okay, just find a cube root of this. It's not like they're going to put on there, okay, do order of operations. What they say is, let's do one problem where they have to do both. So let's take a look at number 3 up here on the board. 3 times 4 squared minus 4 times 3 squared. How do we do that?
Exponent 4/2 or 4 squared.
And here's the most important thing. When you guys get these problems, especially when they're long and lengthy and look confusing, we never try to do the whole thing at once. Just how you attack it one thing at a time. The first thing you do is you do your exponent, right? Because that comes in our order of operations. So 4 squared is what?
16.
16. Bring your 16 down here. Do you see something else you can do?
Your other exponent.
And what's that?
9.
9. 3 squared is 9. Now, I bring down my 3 times 16 minus 4
Times 9.
times 9. What do I do now?
3 times 16.
And what is that?
180. I don't know.
180. You guys have a pen and paper? 48. Don't get so spoiled by the calculator. True indeed, you're going to have a calculator on your test, but your first 5 questions of the test is going to be without a calculator. You're not going to have a calculator on the first 5 questions of your test. And this could be a question that could be on your first 5.
Yeah.
Okay?
Okay.
So 3 times 16 is 48. And then, what do you do next?
4 times 9.
And what's that?
36.
36? Okay. So 48 minus 36 is what?
12.
Good job. And that's our answer. Okay? And like I told you guys, the first 5 questions on your test, you're not going to have a calculator. It might seem small, you know, because the rest of the test you're going to have a calculator, so you might take for granted those first 5 questions. But let me tell you something. Between 70 and 80% of the people who are failing the test are failing it between 1 to 3 questions. The majority of the time is 1 question. That 1 question could be this. So you don't want to take anything for granted. Every point you can get, you want to get it. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
How do I do that?
You do the exponents first?
3 times 3 times 3 times 3. 3 cubed.
Okay.
No.
I would look at 3 cubed.
You're gonna have to find out what times what can go up to 27.
What times what?
Yeah. Can
We'll
go
make
up.
27. So what it's called is the cube root. I want to find out what the cube root of 27 is.
Okay.
So what times what gives me 27? And I got to use the same number.
9.
3.
3.
3.
And think about it. Okay, like Ricky came up with 9, and that's common. It's very common because you see the 3 and you see the 27, and you think automatically your mind says 9 times 3 equals 27, so the answer has to be 9. But I want you to check yourself.
3 times.
If you say it's going to be 9, check yourself. Say, okay, what's 9 times 9? 81. That's already too big. I want you to be able to go over it yourself. It's not about if you get it right or wrong. It's the ability to go over your mistakes and make them right on the test. Okay? Because you're going to make mistakes. You know, but it's the ability to go over them and correct them. So the cube root of 27 is
9 or 3.
3. Don't 9. Okay. And then what?
27.
27.
27 is gonna be canceled out.
This is no longer the cube root of 27.
Okay.
This is 3. I've solved that.
Then you go ahead and solve that 3 cubed and write it down.
3 and 3.
Oh, I made it. I'm going so fast. What is 3
No,
cubed?
it is 12.
It's 27.
See, look
Oh.
at
So I need to bring down the 27.
Oh.
minus 16.
Minus 16. What's my answer?
14.
24.
14. Good job. 27 plus 3 is 30, right?
Minus 16.
30 minus 16 is
14.
14. Good job. Do you guys understand this? You can definitely depend on seeing this on the test. Now, one other twist that they'll put on there is they may have something like this. The cube root of -8 plus -4 to the second power. Now, the twist that they're throwing in this is they've now changed these signs into negatives when we're used to dealing with positives. Now, as you remember when we went over our integer math, right? When we're multiplying and dividing, what are our rules? You guys remember?
What is it now?
When we're multiplying and dividing integers, what are our rules? What are the rules?
If the same sign, you keep the sign. If it's different signs, it's negative.
A positive plus a positive equals a positive. A negative times a negative equals a positive.
what you guys both said, combine them together. Same sign,
It's
positive, different sign, negative. So, using that same philosophy, I need to take the cube root of negative 8, meaning I need to find a number that I started out with, and I multiply it against itself 3 times to get negative 8.
So 2,
Negative.
positive 2.
Okay, here's a big hint. Here's a big hint. If I ended up with negative 8, no way I could have started off with a positive.
Positive.
Because think about it, if I multiply the number against itself and I start out with the positive, I'll never get to negative.
Yeah.
But I can start out with the negative and get the positive, because if I have negative 3 times negative 3, that's what?
Positive.
Positive what? 9. So I can start off with the negative and get a positive. I just can't end up with the negative and start off with a positive. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So what is the cube root of negative 8?
Negative 2.
Negative 2.
Negative
Perfect. Because negative 2 times negative 2 is what?
Positive 4.
Positive 4 times negative 2 is what?
Negative 8.
Negative 8. So negative 2 is correct. Now, what's the negative 4 to the second power?
Positive
16.
Oh, 16.
16. Why is it a negative 16?
Because you started with the negative.
Almost. What'd you say?
Christina said.
What'd you say,
A
Christina?
positive and a negative and a negative is a positive.
Good job. That's the main rule you need to know. A negative and a negative is a positive. So negative 4 times negative 4 equals positive 16. So negative 2 plus 16, still got to do my integer rules. And this is the reason why they love this test question, because instead of just asking you, what's negative 2 plus 16? Instead of asking you, what's the cube root of negative 8? Instead of just asking you, what's negative 4 to the second power? Let's make up one question and ask all 3.
Yeah.
And this is challenging, but if you know how to do each one and you take your time, you'll get it right. But if you take anything for granted, you'll get the whole thing wrong. Okay? So it's a little bit more challenging, but it's very doable. Everybody in here is capable. So now I have negative 2 plus 16. What's my next line of thinking? Don't give me an answer. Tell me how your mind is thinking.
Well, you're gonna have to, that's a positive and that's a negative. So you're gonna have to go back to your add and subtract integer rules.
And what's the rule for that?
The rule for that is if it's a negative and a positive, you gotta subtract.
Okay, perfect. Stop right there. She took her mind, she saw negative 2 plus 16. Okay, that's 2 different signs. I subtract. The very first thing she should do is subtract. What's 16 minus 2? 14. Then she goes back and she says, what's bigger, 16 or 2?
16.
16. 16 is positive, so 14 is going to be
Positive.
great job. You guys, look, the section of the test, you're there, okay? We're going to do some more work, we're going to do some more repetition, but your understanding is definitely there. Good job.